Muriel Sprague Richardson was born in Belleville, Ontario in 1890. She met James Armstrong Richardson in 1918 when Agnes Richardson sought her out as a collaborator for a family project. Muriel helped to fulfill the Richardsons' late brother George's dream of converting the family property at Fettercairn into a convalescent home for shell-shocked soldiers. The following year, she and James were married and moved to Winnipeg. Soon after, became a mother to 4 children, Agnes, James, George, and Kathleen, raising her family in Winnipeg. Muriel joined the firm as a director in 1924 and was James's closest confidant, helping him shape the future of the company. In 1939, tragedy struck, and James Richardson died suddenly at the age of 54. With her children too young to take over the company, she took the reins, referring to herself as a bridge between her late husband and her then young children.
Shortly after the funeral, a company vice president came to see her and patronizingly patted her on the back and said not to worry, that he would take care of the business for her. And well, that galvanized her into action, and she went down to the office the next day and announced that she would be running the company forthwith, and she stayed at the helm for the next 27 years. So that's how it started.
My grandmother didn't have any formal training other than she had been a director since 1924 of the family business, and she was my grandfather's confidant. There was nothing that went on in the business, in his world, in his life, that he did not discuss with my grandmother. While she had no formal training, she had a great deal of common sense, and she had shared with my grandfather what his vision, what his dreams were for the company, and she tried to the best of her ability to continue that, but in her own way.
She was the first woman to be the CEO of a major business organization in this country. So she was a pioneer in that sense. There were no role models. And this was years before women's liberation. So, say even today, women have to work twice as hard to be half as good. And in her time, I mean, it must have been really a struggle. She carried herself with authority. So when she spoke, people listened. So I'm sure she was able to make her way in a man's world.
Just 3 months after taking over the company, the world was once again at war. JR investment managers and employees were involved in the sales and marketing of war victory loan bonds, in the training of pilots, and in communications. Grain personnel helped the government distribute resources to the Allied forces. All of the employees had their jobs and seniority protected if they volunteered for military service. Muriel was an astute business leader, but was also very compassionate, always looking out for the well-being of her staff.
Back in the 1940s, my grandmother, she started a pension plan for the employees and a group life insurance program. And although those are very common now, they weren't back then. There were very few companies that did this, so she was way ahead of other organizations in putting these in place for her employees, as well as other benefits for employees.
Soon after the war, it was business as usual at James Richardson & Sons. Under Muriel's tenure, Pioneer Grain expanded to over 400 country grain elevators. Richardson Securities expanded to over 30 cities, with new offices in the United Kingdom, and significant innovations were contributed to Canadian agriculture.
One of the interesting things she started was at the time of the 100th anniversary of our company. In 1957, Muriel started the Century Fund, and that was initially, it gave books and encyclopedias to schools and universities. And then over the years, it developed into a broader range of philanthropic activities, and it lives on today. It's been rebranded and renamed now the Richardson Foundation. But she started that in 1957 as the Century Fund.
In 1957, she held 14 simultaneous dinners across the country, and on September 21st, through a telephone hookup, she addressed the employees across the country.
How else could I begin than by telling you how delighted we are to have you with us tonight, to share an occasion that has been made possible by your cooperation over the years. We know for we have learned by experience that opportunity will be shadowed by difficulty, that risk of failure will always be hiding along the pathway toward success. But because we have acquired a sense of balance in our outlook, because we are rich in tradition and armored by experience, we shall move into our second century with vigor and enthusiasm.
Muriel Richardson retired in 1966, handing operation of the firm over to her two sons, Jim and George, who had been working with her for 20 years, and her two daughters, Agnes and Kathleen, served as directors. Miss Richardson's legacy left a profound impact on Canadian business and on her family.
Well, I guess first and foremost, there's still a company. So it's 40 years since she retired, and the company is still thriving. She set good things in motion that others have been able to carry on since her tenure as president. But the company is still here. Secondly, the family is still here. It was a family-owned and operated business back in her days, and today the family is still very involved as owners and in the operation and the governance of the company. And lastly, I'd say her values, the values that she espoused, from the ones that we've held back from our great-great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, who started the company, was we want to be the kind of business organization in which people can place their trust. And she lived that and believed that and worked to that end. And other values such as integrity, honesty, hard work, fairness, treating your customers and your employees with respect. I mean, all those have stayed to this day, so I think that's how it lives on.
I remember when I was going to school in Switzerland, just before she passed away, I went and had tea with her and sat in the library. And what I remember most about that visit, because it was the last time I saw her, was that she spent most of the time wanting to know what was going on in my life, how I was enjoying school in Switzerland, and who were my friends, and what were my interests, and she was, again, she was just being a grandmother.